I want to talk a little bit about my own history here as a guitarist. Some of the big influences on me, big aha moments, and the things that I did, and the things that I focus on when I play, and also when I teach. Just as a way of you deciding whether this is something that would be for you to work with me. My first instrument was piano. And primarily because my mom was a piano player and an incredible influence on me. She was a classically trained musician, has taught for many, many years, and is still teaching actually, or has in her 90s even. There's no question about the fact that there would be an influence there. So some of my first things that I was focused on as a kid was classical music, and then I gravitated away from piano and began to take violin lessons, and that was my first real instrument that I really focused on. It took private lessons, did all those sorts of things, ended up in a youth symphony orchestra that was a pretty big deal in the state of Wisconsin, but then stopped playing violin because it wasn't cool. and partly too was I was listening to different kinds of music, but I was starting to listen to some rock and roll and different things that was on the radio at this time. And my mom had an old classical guitar that was underneath her piano, and I picked it up one day and never looked back. Really was self-taught for years. Spent a lot of time sitting around listening to the radio, which was the only real way that I could learn some of these songs. I got my first electric shortly after, and then an instrument that I still have, a Gibson Marauder that I've modified heavily, but it was a guitar my dad bought me, so I've kept and play it. I play it on stage still today. And really didn't. Some of my big aha moments though were is an example when I heard Cream do the song Crossroads, Robert Johnson's song, and was wowed by that. By Clapton's guitar solo that just blew me away. I just loved it. Everything about it, the phrasing and all those things, just really caught me. But also it took me into an entirely different direction because I learned that wasn't a Cream song. It was a Robert Johnson song, and that sent me deep into the blues. So I did that for a long time. Went away to college and still continued that. Sort of took some other directions. I listened to bands like Queen and of course Led Zeppelin and bands like that as well. Took a foray into country rock for a while, and that took me down some roads a little bit into country. I'm still not really a country player, but I have some of those chops just because of that. The blues remained at the center of everything, and I went through a period of time where that was all I listened to, and I was deep into it. I'm a huge Freddie King fan. Love his energy and his power, and certainly believe that he influenced. Well, Eric Clapton said it too, that he was one guy that he would never want to cut heads with because Freddie would burn you down. That was Eric's words. So it tells you just how much power he had. Of course, immortalized in a Grand Funk song and all those sorts of things. Otis Rush too, another influence. Loved his playing and phrasing, and learned a lot of his songs. These days, influenced by a lot of those same things. I love this nexus of where Americana meets blues, soul, funk. Bands that have influenced me heavily are bands like Los Lobos, who I've had the opportunity to hang out with and meet personally and ask questions of, and all those sorts of things. And other bands, a band called Storyville. So David Grissom is a huge influence on me. I love his playing, his phrasing, and the way he incorporates country and blues and rock and an incredible tone too. But I also love Warren Haynes and a guy named Greg Martin from a band called the Kentucky Headhunters. Those are two of my favorite slide players, particularly because they're both generally playing slide in standard tuning, which is really the way that I prefer to do it. My other big aha moment, though, took place right out of college, where feeling stuck in a rut, I took jazz lessons from a guy from Stevens Point, Wisconsin, named Tom McComb. And Tom influenced me greatly. I learned how to form chord solos using jazz chords and chord voicings. I learned about chord substitutions and different kinds of progressions and how to play against those progressions. It really took me from a player that was really stuck in the pentatonic box, really struggling to figure out how to get out of that, and took me into another stratosphere. So in terms of tips and the way that I would approach things, I have some particular prejudices. One of them is about stock bar chords. So I avoid stock bar chords like the plague. So those big bar chords, the standard bar chords, which is a big thing for a lot of people, I don't really play much. I do, if I do, I'm only playing pieces of it. So honest to God truth is that in many band situations, and this is what I teach a lot of people, there are better chords to use. So one thing that I've watched a lot of players do is to play what would typically be, let's say, in key of A, playing a bar chord like that, is to simplify it and actually use your thumb. Hendrix did that a lot, using his thumb to bar chords. So play that kind of a chord, which is cleaner. And in the context of a band, when you've got all this mid-range competition happening, playing a chord like that will stand out a little bit more. You won't need to have quite so much volume to have it stand out. A lot of instruments fighting for that mid-range sort of territory in the sonic territory in a band. In a context like that, especially if there's another guitar player or a keyboard player, instead of playing that A chord like that, I'm going to go up an octave. So I'll be doing some things like that, comping on things like that. Also love different kinds of chord inversions, and playing chords that have slightly different voicings. They may be, as an example, here's another A chord. Here's that A bar chord. I'll go up and I'll do an inversion which comes out of the Western swing department. Again, I learned this from Tom McComb. And play a voicing like that is a little bit simpler, and it's high up, and it's got the lowest note is a different note in that chord. I also love open chords, even playing notes on higher strings. Again, that's an A sound, and it's got that suspended sound to it. Basic pentatonic classic. Again, I'm trying to get you moving in different ways. So pentatonics, still that's a minor pentatonic with some added notes in there. It's just going up a little bit higher on the guitar. I'm going to talk about adding in major sounds. So instead of just being in a minor pentatonic, and we are going to learn why a minor pentatonic works when you've got chords that have major thirds in them. But there are other sounds there that you can use, that you can pull out of those chords. So instead of just having that minor pentatonic sound, we're gonna move into some major sounds, which allows you to add in some other things, some more country type sounds. You know, things like that are really going to make a difference and make your solos stand out. One of the things that I do a lot is teach people also how to play slide, and I do play slide largely in standard tuning, and part of that is I don't need to go and have an entirely different guitar that's tuned in a different way. I can do it just with the guitars that I have. One thing that is real key is that you need to know the fretboard. You need to know where notes are in relation to one another. Where are those root notes? If you're in the key of A, where are your A's across the guitar? Whereas your flatted seventh, which is going to be a whole step down from your root. But there are some techniques. I'm muting behind the slide. I'm muting with my palm. I do a lot of muting with my fingers, so that allows me to play individual notes in places where there aren't adjacent note choices, and that's an important thing. So we would work a lot on that. So I believe that my forte is really taking people and taking them to the next level as a player. So out of the boxes of all kinds, whether it's bar chord box and minor pentatonic box, or, we're going to do some other things. And so if that sounds like something that you're really interested in doing, come see me and we will figure out how to make it happen. As I said, I will do virtual lessons with people, I love to coach and to help people to become the player that they really want to be.